My name's John Foley and I'm Principal at St Michael's College. We've got two campuses, one here at Henley Beach and another one at Beverley. Our secondary campus here at Henley Beach and our primary at Beverley. I reckon my main interest started once we started to develop our new mission and vision. The vision language is really built around, I suppose, the individual and particularly our students being able to explore their curiosities, to really flourish and to fully realise their potential. And we put right at the centre of that this idea of being known, valued and cared for. And it seemed as if for that to happen to its full potential, that we needed to have a better way of understanding who each of our students were. There was a moment in time where we'd collected a lot of data through a wellbeing engagement collection, and we were around a meeting table and quite simply we were saying, well, what are we going to do with this now? We had all this massive data from years 8 to 12 on wellbeing, and we had no real process in terms of how we're going to use that. And the conversation was about, well, we'll just give this to our year level directors. And it seemed like a point in time to be able to stop and say we need a better approach to our analysis of this type of data. One of the other things that drew me to the field of learning analytics was the work of Todd Rose from Harvard, from the Centre for Individual Opportunity. And Todd uses this example about the US Air Force during the 1940s and 50s and how they had so many crashes that were happening and they couldn't work out why. They thought they had the best pilots, they had the best material, the best planes. And what they think they worked out after a while was the cockpit. And what they had done was in the 1920s was to be able to do a design based on a survey of 100 pilots, and it measured what they thought was the average height and weight and size and arm span and leg span to be able to build the cockpit. And what happened was over that period of a few decades is they didn't change the cockpit at all. So during that, at the end of that time, they then did another survey and it was of 4,000 pilots. And this time what they did was on 10 different measures of body size, etc. And at the end of it, what their hypothesis was that they'd be able to find an average pilot. But what they found at the end of the day was that there was 0 of those 4,000 pilots that actually fit that average model. And that, if you transfer that into education, fits for mine. And that is, the more we try and fit students under an average, under a bell curve, a normal curve, the less we're able to look at their individual opportunities that could be available to them. Todd Rose wrote this book after Ban the Average, and it was called Dark Horses. And so what he did, he looked, I suppose in a backward design way, at those people who had been very successful in life but not followed the normal pathways. And he found that they had some common trends to them. And it was really outside the normal standardisation approach to learning and to life. For many of them, they might have done some study at some point in time, but not followed the same pathway afterwards in terms of the study. It was generally about following their passions, but more important, it was about they found out about why that passion was important to them. And it was always about aligning it to their life values. What was most important to them? And I suppose in some ways, he would say, let's not pursue excellence and success as the purpose, but fulfilment and happiness is the purpose, and that will bring excellence and success to your life. And these dark horses seem to have this common trend of being able to do that as their main purpose to how they looked into that next phase of their careers. So, I mean, we've got what you might call the standard approach to data collection, and some of that we use quite well, and others we need to develop. So our standard ones that we would utilise are things like attendance data, our pastoral data, our NCCD data that we have, and together with things such as grades. So one that I can think of as an example is the SACE research project. So we noticed around about 2013 that our actual results, our student results, were not as strong as schools in the area. And so we needed to make some purposeful changes. So we used the data that we had at our disposal at the time to make those changes. And we've been able to see these significant gains for our students over that time. So for example, since 2013, we've been able to move from around about 27% of students in the A band to around about 60%, and 24% in the C band to single digits in the C band. Now that was used around genuine analysis of what we saw as the data and the problems associated with it. So we can now identify very clearly 8 or 10 points that changed from that analysis. And they include things like getting a more positive mindset about how we approach the research project. It included about building the skills of our teachers. It included about how we sent a communication to our parents and our students about the value of the research project. It also included cross-moderation, having a detailed approach to planning and strategy with it, and also about identifying key leaders and I suppose champions of the research project. The second problem, I guess, would have been identified through the project with UniSA, where we really found that we were better purposed to actually build a framework rather than just present a data wall, for example. And that framework really gave us a lot more alignment with our vision, and particularly with our 5-point strategy that we've developed at St Michael's College over the last 18 months. So as I said, our aspiration or our vision is that each student is known, valued and cared for. And we believe that the analytics will give us a rounder and deeper understanding of each student, and not only about the standardised data that we might normally get in terms of NAPLAN or grades, for example, but it will give us maybe a greater understanding of their passions, of what really excites them about learning, about what their future aspirations are. Perhaps more deeply involved in what they are developing in terms of their capabilities. And we can see real benefits in knowing that. Also easier access for our staff when they teach maybe 5 or 6 classes, to be able to have a way of getting to understand and know those students both on a personal relationship, but also somehow have greater access to the data that's available for them. Probably 2 of the other areas are in being more informed for early interventions. And those interventions could be on a whole range of issues, whether it be about teaching and learning, whether it be about well-being, future pathways. We believe that is really important in getting to know each student and give them the best opportunity for success. So I think the development of our framework has been very useful in aligning with our strategy. So our strategy has 5 major points associated with it. So it's our Catholic Lasallian experiences. It's about a well-articulated model of teaching and learning in the way that we do things today. It's about supporting staff and students to flourish. Our 4th one is about personalised learning experiences that are really meaningful in terms of now and into the future of an ever-changing world. And the 5th one is about being able to provide opportunities of engagement for our community members. And all of them pretty much are built around relationships and the value of the individual person. So if we can align our analytics program to be able to help achieve each of those and bring those to life, then I think we're in a really good position. I think it will be the same at most institutions, and that is about really aligning it to your purpose and intent, what we might call our aspirations, and that it doesn't just become a data wall or be able to be something which is on a dashboard. Being able to move that data from what might be just numbers into an analysis to how it applies to each individual student and to the school as a whole. It seems to me that in schools the standardised agenda is a very strong story that's been developed over a long time, and I think that we need to be able to develop more a future-focused, an individual opportunity, a personalised narrative before we can move much further with this. And I think that learning analytics has its place, but if it just becomes part of the standardised agenda with students sitting under curves, then we're not really going to get the progress that we're after. So when we're talking about the capabilities, for example, it becomes a situation where if we start to move down a line of ranking people's success in the capabilities or grading the capabilities, we're going to end up in exactly the same place. To know that someone got an A in their capability of teamwork really is useless to most people. We want to know what's their development of that team. Were they part of the original setup of that team? Was it built around a passion? What's their level of collaboration in the team and success in the team? Did they come up with innovative ideas through working with that team? That's what we want to know, more so than they got an A for that, for example. Another challenge that I really see in schools is trust and buy-in from our staff. It's very much that at St Michael's College we want to trust our staff to be able to do their job to the best of their ability, and we want to put in the support and the structures that allow them to do that. Schools can be very complex places. There's rapid change which is often happening, and so we need to be able to measure and monitor how we introduce new initiatives, and that would include data analytics. I don't think there has been significant work done within education in terms of data literacy. There are misconceptions, misunderstandings about what data is and what it can be used for and how it can be used to best effect. And so the language involved with that, one of the examples might be in the use of Hattie's work, for example, where I know that within education there was quite a significant pushback on some of that work, because I think there were some misconceptions in terms of what his effect size actually meant, for example. And so people were, for example, ranking some of his meta-analysis or his results and saying, well, this doesn't really work. Whereas Hattie wasn't saying that. He was saying, well, this does work, but this had a greater effect attached to it. But as soon as people get into that conversation without the depth of understanding of what that data actually means, where it's come from, what it can be useful for, then we've got an issue in terms of buy-in, I think. I think one of the other challenges is in the development of some of the dashboards that are out there now. So some of the suites, so BI, for example, is a very powerful tool and has some usefulness within education. However, again, if it just turns out to be plotting data onto the dashboard without any depth of understanding or buy-in or professional development of staff, then it really isn't going to be particularly useful. I would take the time, and if that time is 12 months or more, to set up a solid framework. And that framework is how you will be able to best set up the data analytics process. It must be aligned to your mission, to your vision, to what are the most important things that you value within your school. And if you don't do that, then I believe that it will just become, again, a dashboard where people are looking at numbers and not be able to get the effects that they want out of that, whether that be interventions, whether that be knowing students, whether that be setting up appropriate personalised learning programs or personalised pathways for them as well. I would really encourage schools to be able to find out what really makes students tick, what their passions are, and not only what their passions are, but why that's a passion for them. Because the more that we understand that about each individual student, then the more prepared and able we are to set up the right learning environment for each of those individual students. Schools over time have very much been about setting up curriculums that get the best effect for the most people. And I think that education really must be moving in a way that actually excites students, allows them to explore their passions and their curiosities so that they are fully engaged and are better prepared for the world ahead. So another piece of advice I would have for people moving into the learning analytics field is to work with the experts. Work with those who research this, work with those who have seen it work across lots of different organisations and fields, because education needs to broaden its horizons in terms of how we approach data analytics. And we need to be able to make sure that we are making the right decisions with the right evidence and research behind those decisions. From what I can see in my research of learning analytics, there's still very much a focus on standardisation, on benchmarking, on looking at the average about where students sit in rankings, and I think that's going to be one of the things that must change in learning analytics so that we're able to get a very much more personalised approach and be able to give students greater opportunities, and I guess an understanding that their uniqueness and what makes them special is what's most important, more so than where they stand in relation to other students. This is my hope, that it becomes more personalised, that it understands that each individual is unique and that they are multifaceted, that it is impossible to actually categorise a person, a student, as being a particular type. And if learning analytics can move in that direction, then we'll be much more prepared to be able to educate students for the future. So I think collaboration in learning analytics will be essential to the future. And I think also that we must look at this as work in progress. I don't think there will be a definitive moment when we will develop a dashboard, a way of being in terms of analytics that just suits every situation. It'll need to be very unique for each setting, and it will have to be able to be adaptable to the needs at the time. And I think in the setup, in the project that we're doing at the moment, one of the things that excites me about that is that if we see a need in time, if we need some agility or some flexibility, then what we're going to produce at the end of the day should allow us to be able to do that. We might be able to get a certain set of data which we believe we need at that point in time, and be able to then bring that in and to be able to make really good educational decisions about that, rather than have a set product which doesn't allow us to do that.